The world's greatest mind was about to be desecrated. April 18th, 1955. Albert Einstein dies at 76. Quietly, in a Princeton hospital bed. He had one final wish. No grand funeral, no shrine, just cremation, ashes scattered in secret. But within hours of his death, a doctor took something that was never his to take. This is the unbelievable true story of Einstein's stolen brain. Dr. Thomas Harvey was the pathologist on duty that morning. His job was routine: conduct the autopsy, document the cause of death, close the file. He did not do that. Harvey removed Einstein's brain entirely. He also removed Einstein's eyes, without the authorization of his family or the Einstein family estate. The eyes were handed to Einstein's ophthalmologist, Dr. Henry Abrams, locked away in a New York safe deposit box, where they remain to this day. The brain, Harvey kept for himself. His reasoning: genius research. He believed Einstein's brain held secrets that could unlock the mystery of human intelligence itself. When Einstein's son, Hans Albert, discovered what Harvey had done, he was furious. But Harvey made a promise: the brain would be used only for serious scientific research. Hans Albert reluctantly agreed. One condition, one promise, and a story that would stretch across 4 decades. Shortly after the autopsy, Princeton Hospital fired Thomas Harvey. The reason? He refused to surrender Einstein's brain. Rather than hand it over, Harvey drove to the University of Pennsylvania with the brain in his car. There, he went to work. He sliced the brain into roughly 240 small sections, each about 1 centimeter thick. He embedded them in a substance called celloidin and cut hundreds of microscope slides. He distributed some slides to researchers. He kept the rest. Then, the trail went cold. Harvey eventually moved to the Midwest, settling in Wichita, Kansas, and the brain went with him. For years, the world's most famous organ sat hidden, not in a laboratory, not in a university archive, in mason jars, stored in a cardboard cider box, under a beer cooler in his basement. No published studies, no breakthroughs, just a genius's brain, quietly gathering dust in the American heartland. Then, in 1978, a young journalist named Stephen Levy got a tip. Levy followed the Einstein brain journey across the country and found Harvey. He knocked on the door. Harvey answered, and there, in a box labeled Costa Cider, was Albert Einstein's brain. The story exploded. After more than 20 years of silence, the world finally knew where the stolen brain had been hiding. With the brain back in public view, the first wave of genius research could finally begin. In 1985, neuroscientist Marion Diamond at UC Berkeley examined donated tissue samples. She reported finding an unusually high ratio of glial cells to neurons in key regions, cells that support and nourish brain activity. Headlines screamed that scientists had found the source of Einstein's genius, but critics pushed back hard. Diamond's sample size was tiny. The methodology was contested. Many experts called the conclusions a stretch at best. The science raised more questions than it answered, and the strangest chapter of the Einstein brain story hadn't happened yet. By 1997, Thomas Harvey was in his 80s. He had spent over 40 years guarding, moving, and occasionally loaning out pieces of Einstein's brain. Now, he decided it was time for one last journey. He teamed up with writer Michael Paterniti, who documented the trip in his book, Driving Mr. Albert. And the two men drove across America, with the brain stored in a Tupperware container in the trunk. Their destination, Evelyn Einstein, Albert's adopted granddaughter, living in California. The plan: to offer her the brain, a reunion of family and flesh. She politely declined. It was a moment that said everything. Even Einstein's own family, representatives of the Einstein family estate, could not bear to take custody of what had been taken without consent. The body autonomy that Einstein had demanded in life had been violated. No road trip could undo that. Harvey eventually returned a portion of the brain to Princeton, to the very hospital that had fired him decades earlier. But the scientific community wasn't finished. In 1999, neuroscientist Sandra Whittleson published a study in The Lancet. She noted unusual features in Einstein's parietal lobes, the region associated with mathematical and spatial reasoning. Again, the media erupted. Again, the scientific community was divided. More studies followed in 2007, in 2012, and beyond. Each claimed to find something new. Each was met with fresh skepticism. The hard truth: no study has ever definitively proven what made Einstein a genius. His brain is not a map to brilliance. It is a deeply human organ, with all the complexity and ambiguity that implies. Then, in 2007, Thomas Harvey died. In 2010, his heirs transferred all remaining brain tissue, along with original photographs, to the National Museum of Health and Medicine in Maryland. After 55 years, the Einstein Brain journey had finally found a home. Today, 46 thin slides of Einstein's brain are on public display at the Mutter Museum in Philadelphia. Visitors stand in front of a small glass case. They stare at tiny rectangles of preserved tissue. Each one holds a fragment of the most celebrated mind in modern history, and most of them walk away with the same quiet, unsettling feeling. It looks just like anyone else's. That, in many ways, is the point. What this story really leaves behind is something more uncomfortable. Einstein made his wishes clear. He wanted cremation. He wanted privacy. He wanted to disappear. Instead, his brain was sliced into 240 pieces, stored under a beer cooler in Kansas, driven across the country in a Tupperware container, and put on display behind glass in Philadelphia, all without his consent. All in the name of science, all driven by one man's obsession. Thomas Harvey believed he was doing something noble. Perhaps he was. But the line between noble and wrong is thin when you ignore what the person actually asked for. Einstein once wrote that a human being is not separate from the whole. That thinking we are is a kind of delusion. Perhaps the greatest genius of the 20th century understood something most of us forget. We are not our brains. Einstein's brain never unlocked the secret of genius, but the story of what happened to it, the theft, the hiding, the cross-country drive, the long ethical debate. That story tells us everything about who we are. Curious, obsessive, brilliant, and sometimes deeply wrong. The world's greatest mind is gone, but the questions it left behind, those will never stop.